go ahead and get started. Today's the 15th of October on a Tuesday, Public Works, and we're here for a workshop, and it's pretty much a AVCON show. But before we get started, I just want to say that there have been some complaints, residential complaints about water, which I totally understand and embrace. I understand that. That's the reason we're where we are today, and trying to come up with a solution. I want to take those. These are all the emails that were emailed to me. There's 3 of them, and the people in there are here in the room. So I'm going to get and hand them off to AVCON, so AVCON can have record of them, public record of them. And at some point, they may call you up or come out to visit you and take a look at your property. With that said, this is your show, and
all right,
we'll let you go.
I'm Tanya Nation. I'm with AVCON. We were hired to prepare a hydrological and hydraulic study evaluating the City of Mexico Beach's drainage systems. So I'm just going to go over a few just bullet points, just kind of outline what our study is, what we're doing, because it seems to be a point of confusion. So the project is a federally funded project through FEMA and the Florida Department of Emergency Management. And we're to prepare an H&H study, evaluate the drainage within this drainage area here. This area was defined by Atkins, who prepared the grant applications. And so this area was predefined before we were even involved. And to evaluate the drainage systems within that area and help relieve flooding within the city. So our scope was to provide that and provide recommendations for the overall area. The goals would be to reduce the localized flooding, provide an updated stormwater master plan for the city. Part of the grant objectives were to also include a 40-acre pond on the property that was donated by St. Joe. So that large 80-acre parcel there. So part of that is to evaluate the stormwater capacity and availability on that site and look at getting water out of the study area as much as we can and to that 40-acre pond as part of one of our design objectives. Things that we are not looking at specifically. We are going to be collecting data from the public and wanting to know how the master drainage system and how these issues within the drainage within the right-of-way, how it's affecting private property, but we aren't going to be looking at specific private properties. This is to evaluate the city's drainage systems, their collection systems. There is a lot of portions of the roadway, right-of-ways, and collection systems that are broken today. And everybody sees it, especially during these large storm events where you see damming, you see a lot of issues where stormwater just can't get to where it's going. It can't get to the canals, and it gets dammed up, and then it goes into private property. And so, but the goal of this study is to fix those issues and to make it better to where we don't have water staging up onto the private properties. So the first phase of this project and what was initially funded is this hydrological study, this H&H study. This will be, once we complete the study and provide our recommendations and evaluate the benefit cost analysis for this, then it will be submitted to FDEM for final funding of the next phase, which is actually implementing the improvements within the right-of-way. So phase 2 is when actually, but we have to get to that next step. And for this first step, we really have to meet with the community and get feedback from the community. We have opened up an email address. It's called Mexico Beach and H, not the and symbol, but actually spelled out, at avconinc.com. So residents of the community, whether they're here or not, they can email us their issues. We are going to document all of the issues, document all of the pictures and feedback that we get from the community and include that in our formal grant application to FDEM to make sure that we can compete well for these dollars. Right now, they have earmarked $7 million for the funds, and we want to make sure that we can compete very well and show the public need. And that's going to be very critical, a critical component of this. So getting your feedback in writing is very important, and every comment will be recorded and included in this grant application. So we want to make sure that we get as much feedback as possible, and no comment will go unheard. So yeah, the local workshops are really required. We do have to quantify our damages. So if you did have flooding during Michael, or if you've had flooding outside of the hurricane, that is actually even more critical in quantifying the number of houses that have actually had flooding outside of the hurricane. Any average storms, if you have dates, like my house took on water on this date, this date, this date, those are really important factors that we can include in the grant to make the application stronger. So today, the city council members are here just as a sounding board. They're here to listen and observe. They're not here to make any decisions. This is not what the workshop is for. It is a data collection effort. My team and I were here to meet with you, to pass out comment cards, and to we can go over, we would like to know where your home is. We want to know what your problems are. By getting it in writing is definitely the best way for us. We'll document as much as we can that's provided to us verbally, but the comment cards are great. We'll record that data, but the more information you can give us over email would be very helpful in making sure that we get everything documented, particularly if every time it rains your house floods. We have done studies before where there was one gentleman, every single time it rained, his house flooded. And he was built in his 1970s neighborhood. And we were able to identify what was happening and make that node better by just simply creating improvements to the drainage infrastructure. So identify that was just running by his house, and it made it significant. His house hasn't flooded since the improvements were implemented in 2014. So we want to make sure that we get as much data as possible to understand what your needs are. We have a good idea of what the needs are. We have a lot of information already, but there's no one knows their problems like the community. And the city wants to make sure, and everything that is submitted to us will be formally submitted to the city, so it is part of public record, so that the city council can see the log, and it'll be an ongoing log that we provide to the city, so they can see what the issues are and make sure that everything is documented. Because you have to be heard, and it's really important. Your information, it really does need to be included. So with that being said, we do have a study area. It's just over 400 acres. This map here does show the study area in blue. We are aware that some of the components are not in the city limits. This boundary was predetermined based on existing drainage characteristics. Excuse me. And it was part of the original grant that was applied for to get to where we are today. Some of this here, this is not evaluated, but if there is a drainage break, as we're going through, and if there's a drainage break and say this line needs to be shifted to here, we will be doing that. We're not just going to say this is the line, and if it's not on this line, we're cutting it out. If there is impacts from drainage, we will make sure that everything is evaluated, that it is close to that line. We do have to stick as closely to it as we can, just because of how the grant was written. And then most of the improvements, keep in mind, the improvements are going to be in the right-of-ways. The city has a linear park. There are canals here. We'll be looking at maintaining the existing stormwater infrastructure, maintaining the existing canals, looking at invasive species, ways that we can improve what's existing to the backbone, and then ways that we can get some of this water redirected over to this 80-acre parcel and into a nice big 40-acre pond. 40 acres was the minimum required by the grant. And so that will be something that will be evaluated as far as what size it needs to be. But the grant required a minimum of 40 acres. So tonight the plan is we are not going to have people come up to the podium, and we would like for it to be able to you to come up and speak with us directly. You can point to where your concerns are, and you can take one of our agendas. You can use that to email us. You can fill out a comment card. We weren't sure how many people would show. Sometimes we do these meetings and we have 300 people show up. Sometimes we have, just a handful. So, but we are, we're here to answer any specific questions that you have pertaining to the study and what's included. But like the recommendations will come later, and we will have a second public forum before it goes for formal acceptance by the city that will be unveiled to the public and in a workshop format. That way, if there is any comments or feedback, we can incorporate that before the city has to make a determination. We want to make sure what we're doing is for the betterment of the community as a whole. And we'll be able to, someone can say, once this is completed, someone will say, well, my house, I live on Arizona Drive. My house floods every other time it rains. And we'll be able to say, well, today your house flood, the rainwater gets up to here. But after this is implemented, the rainwater will be at X and it won't get near your finished floor. We'll be able to identify that for any one of the blocks. We'll be going through block by block and evaluating drainage block by block in the study. Let's see here. Today there is a system of swales, and not swales. Everyone's aware of that. The swale systems, it'll be draining and then it just hits a dam. And then the water can't go anywhere and it floods into private property owners. We are looking at that. That'll be a key component in this. We'll be looking at culvert sizes for all of the private properties that connect up to the roads within the right of way. Those culverts will be evaluated. If they are undersized, part of our recommendation will be upsizing them too. And then providing the city with minimum culvert sizes for any future developments. And then also providing recommendations for grading, what the grading needs to be, and the right of way for any future developments, because there's a lot of new development coming to Mexico Beach, and so it's all about smart growth and providing those recommendations to help y'all move forward. So I think the city, if y'all have any specific questions, I'd like to answer any questions you might have before we open it up to the public, because but remember, this is just, you're here just to sound, but if you had any specific questions or concerns, I'd be more than happy to take those before we open it up to the public.
Okay, do you have an elevation map right now at this point?
Our map is based on current elevations. We're in the process of modeling it to define all the elevations for the blocks. Right now, we do not have that finalized.
Okay. How far do you think this process is? It 2 months away, 3 months away?
It is about 3 months away, yes, to get everything identified.
Okay. And the grant is for $8 million?
That is correct.
And we only had approval on the $1 million.
That's correct.
We have to justify the 7.
That is correct. And we are not doing the benefit cost analysis. Atkins is hired to do that. Atkins will be, once we finish our portion, then they will be taking and completing the benefit cost analysis. So our report with their benefit cost analysis will go in for grant review and approval. Now, once it gets into the FDEM's hands, that's where things slow down. Unfortunately, that's where it does take time. But there are things that in our recommendations that if the city has new developments, they will be able to say, no, we need you to include this swale section and include this culvert size, so that you're not on hold until the grant is issued. Things that private developers can do if they say, I want to put in a swale in front of my house, what do I need to do? You say, this is the plan. Please implement these portions of that plan for your property. It's a roadmap, and it'll be able to help. It'll be a useful tool for the city to use to help for smart growth.
So we can start some suggested changes
That is
before
correct.
we get funded.
Absolutely, because there's nothing that says that you can't. Especially culverts. If there's a simple fix, Public Works could replace 3 culverts and a road will drain tremendously better. Those things can be done. Those are low-hanging fruit, and a lot of times those aren't the things that you really want to use that money for. The big drainage systems and creating that 40-acre pond and some of the big culverts and big conveyance to that pond, $7 million doesn't go very far when you have grants like these. So trying to stretch some of our dollars where we can in the right of ways will be really useful.
But we could, I want to hear you again, we can make some expenditures before we're fully funded.
You can make city expenditures that are not from the grant. You won't be able to utilize the grant dollars until it's funded. So if the city has dollars or private business wants to implement portions, they can, but you cannot touch the 7
You make the
million.
expenditure and then justify the expenditure.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Tim, you got any questions?
I do. Do you know why this is the area that was included and other areas weren't included? I know you didn't do this grant initially.
So we did speak with Atkins about why this area was selected, and based on the contours that we have received, it looks like this is pretty close to the drainage basin boundary. For example, based on what we have, it looks like there's a break here, so water does go this way and out, and then there's a break, and then this water travels this way. This system here is part of a separate system, is based on what we have to date. Now, this here is our understanding. There's issues with this culvert, this ditch system here, so they wanted to include everything that was associated with it. But as far as why they specifically, besides just the general drainage area, it's my understanding that's what they use to define that.
So I've already heard from a number of residents that live south of Highway 98, for example, from about, let's say, 29th west, that have concerns. And I have seen the water it just piles up and goes down to the beach, and it piles up and it goes into their homes or yards. So I'm just surprised that's not in this. So I guess the question is, so can we consider this like phase 1 and have a phase 2?
Absolutely.
So will you have so your study is going to be limited to this area?
Today it is limited to that area, but yes, we could look at expanding the study area. And the way that our model will work is I'll be able to tell you, we'll be able to look and say, okay, well, if water is, for example, if let's say water is staging up, from say 21st Street onto 98, and then it's impacting these properties south of 98, we'll be able to look at how how the improvements are going to help make that better. And we can demonstrate whether there will be a need once everything is implemented, which will help you make an educated, decision as to how far we need to add, what we need to add to phase 2.
So what I'm asking is, what are we going to need to do to then include the rest of the city in this analysis?
Well, we're going to identify areas.
That's right.
We've already, on the south side, I think I know what you're talking about. What happens there is it comes off of 98 and everything goes south to the beach. And it actually collects at the end of the street. I only know that because I spent like 4 foot of water walking through it. So at the end of the street, it just collects there.
Right.
They have to pump it up over the dunes. So that's going to be an identified area
That's right.
Not on this map.
That's right.
Okay. The 8th Street Canal, could
Yes.
that be included all the way to the beach? Because it's not just a problem to that point.
Absolutely. It really, the boundary is based on the grant funding, but honestly, we have to include it all the way to the beach. We take it all the way to the outfall. So we do. We look at everything all the way to the outfall for all of our improvements, yes.
2 more quick questions. So
Absolutely.
you talked about the swell system and culverts. So the swells, those are the ditches, right?
Those are ditches that run parallel to the roadways.
What about the canals or ditches, other parts of the city that aren't near roadways?
So the canals that, because there are a lot of canals that are actually that need major maintenance. So we will make recommendations on what we need to do to help the city, the city to maintain those canals, especially with invasive species. I've noticed there's a lot of invasive plants in those canals which limit flow.
Right.
So we'll be making recommendations on that and evaluating that to show, like, if this canal is 50% impeded or 65% impeded, when we open up that impedance, how everything flows, we can demonstrate that. But that will definitely be part of this.
So will we be limited to swells, canals, ditches? Is there a possibility that we could put pipe and cover in these areas?
Absolutely, we can definitely do pipe in, that would be something we'd have to look for some additional dollars. Just because there is a very large study area. And right now we only have $7 million, but there are a lot of other grant mechanisms that we can look at to have the bigger picture. We're not going to basically come up with a $7 million solution. We'll have options and say, okay, well, this is what you can get for $7 million, but if you go a little further, you can get this much pipe in, and give you solutions like that. And especially in areas where it works better if you have a pipe. There are going to be situations where we can't use swales. We have to pipe it to get to the next area. There are high points that we can't change because we have existing homes and high points in roads. So we have to work with what's there. And so there are going to be opportunities where we have to use pipes.
All right, last question for now.
No, you're good.
Pipe size. So I know you're looking at culverts. I'm guessing you're looking at the drain. When you say culverts, are you looking at the pipe size?
Absolutely. So right now you have a lot of driveways, and those driveways have pipes under them. Those are what I'm referring to as culverts.
Okay.
And so those culverts, we're looking at those pipe sizes because there are, if you go down any street, you can see they vary in size. Some are really small. Some are like down to 8 inches. Some of them are much larger at 18 inches. And so what we look at is what is that cross section of that swale that's running along the road and how much water is actually coming to it, and those pipe sizes, because those pipe sizes are huge restrictors. Or if there is no pipe, how is, we're going to be making recommendations on how to fix that. We've got to put in pipe.
All right, thank you.
I was just thinking about some of the sinkholes that we see in the city that, it's like we go and put maybe dirt more on top of it, but then it doesn't seem like it's getting reconnected. So, like that seems to be a big problem that I don't understand why we're doing that as a solution at times. We're seeing that on Florida in particular.
Okay. And that's something we'll look at, because a lot of times what happens is there's several different reasons why sinkholes, I say sinkholes loosely because some of them are, there's sinkholes. But a lot of what we see that a lot of people define as sinkholes are actually created from maybe there is a pipe failure, and below grade there's a pipe and maybe the joint is not connected, and so the pipe takes in water and sand, and then you start seeing the earth opens up and you end up with a sinkhole there, or so you end up with erosion, significant erosion there. We've seen roads fail that way. Or you can run into a situation where you've got water just swirling because it's just eroding, and because it can't get to one place, or it's trying to take and make a 90-degree turn. It can't make that turn fast enough, and so it just does a whirlpool and it just eats out all of the earth around it, and you lose a lot of material that way. So we will be definitely evaluating that. We factor that in and try to avoid those 90-degree turns if possible to prevent that from happening.
And then another concern too is about the Gulfview Motel. They have a big drain in their parking lot, but the drain goes nowhere. And when it fills up, then that whole parking lot fills up, and that interferes with that business greatly. So,
Oh, wow.
so who's going to be responsible for that? And I know they're going to be repaving that highway, so I don't know if that's going to be something that the changing the highway flow a little bit is going to help with that. But still, that big giant drain in that parking lot goes nowhere.
So that's on private property, and right now that is excluded out of the study area, but that's something that if you had plans, we could look at it to see where it's going. If it is an exfiltration bed, it may be supposed to perk. But I really, that's something right now that was not included in our scope. But if we're fixing the right-of-way drainage and the city drainage, and a lot of the water that may be making its way into that parking lot will not be making its way into the parking lot today, once the study is implemented.
It is 98 and 15. It's drainage from the 98 and 15.
It is, okay. And so that will, once we remove that drainage from that system that's going into that low spot, then if they had, for example, if they have an exfiltration bed underneath their parking, which a lot of people do, and it was designed to just accommodate the parking, it would work just fine. But it's probably taking on a lot of off-site drainage, is my assumption, and that's what's causing it to just not be able to recover quick enough.
Does either city administrator have a question?
I'll save the best to last. The intent of the DOT's project of resurfacing 98, they're supposed to fix that drainage there on the corner and reroute it and that sort of thing. How effective that's going to happen, I've not seen plans, but that's supposed to be taken care of. And I say supposed to be. We'll see how that turns out.
We have not seen the plans yet either, but as soon as they are available, we always take any DOT projects into account. So if DOT has 30% plans even, we will get those to make sure that they are accounted for. Because if they have a drainage project that is going to change how things are working, we want to make sure we include that drainage system in our model. And so a lot of times what we can do is reach out to them and get their models and incorporate them into ours. And then that way we have a big master system.
All right, the second thing, I live in Paradise. I look over my balcony and I see 8th Street Canal.
Yes.
So I see its level go up and down. It goes up when it rains. And then when either the city or someone else digs a little trench in the sand, and all that drainage just goes out into the Gulf, which is what it's supposed to do. So my question is there a way to keep that level low so that we have capacity for additional rain that comes?
A lot of communities, particularly communities like yours, if they see the waters getting high, they will have Public Works go and dig that out right before a large storm. If you know there's a large storm coming and you're like, oh no, we're going to be getting a really, really big storm, they will actually send Public Works out to break the outfall to make sure that the water is lowered. Most communities try to depend on it to naturally occur. The systems work better that way. So maintaining it's hard for y'all because it just naturally occurs and it will naturally continue to build back up. Walton County deals with it with their coastal dune lakes, and I haven't looked at a lot of historical aerials, but this system functions similar to those coastal dune lakes, and they ultimately just pop out at the Gulf. And so, but they do during large storm events. If they need a pop off, they can do that, and they can relieve that. And that's something the city can do without any type of agency issues.
Okay.
Mr. Truitt?
The 40-acre pond, is that detention or retention?
This would be wet detention.
Okay.
It would be wet detention. The site is very wet.
Okay.
So we will be providing a design for it. It will, the wetland rules have changed since they originally applied for this grant, so it will have to go through the U.S. Army Corps for permitting. So that, there will be a time, unfortunately, when you have to go through the federal permitting system, it does get a little bit slowed. But we will, that is something that it is a very wet area, but the site is loaded with invasives. So what the pitch is that we'd be doing some wetland restoration and making the other 40 acres a higher quality wetland, removing the invasive species, and then providing the stormwater pond that would provide a net benefit for the community through drainage.
Do we have any idea the capacity of that, since we're seeing storms coming a week, 2 weeks apart?
Right now I have some general ideas on what the capacity will be, but really until we get right into the study and to determine exactly how much water we can get there realistically, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to obtain.
Thank you.
But yes, we will be able to quantify that. We have to quantify that as part of the document.
Okay,
Good
Mr. Nation,
questions.
if you're ready to go to the public, we're gonna have them come to the podium only because we're televising this, so
Okay.
they can't hear unless they're up there and listening.
All right, no problem. Okay, well then,
Televising.
so I do encourage you, after you come to the podium, please on the Facebook page, the email address, it's Mexico Beach H&H@avcon8.com. We have agendas over here, but please go to that email and email us your photos, your name, your address, your photos, and any comments you have about your flooding, when it's occurring, the frequency, and when your property is taken on water. Those are going to be really important, and that's really important information for our documentation. So we do strongly recommend, so even for those that are listening, to please provide that information to us. We want to make sure we have a very good collective information. So the more information you can provide, the better.
The three that you have, we'll send you all those files. We have all those files.
Perfect. And we'll put those already, I've got those set aside. We'll put those in our database and make sure that they'll be the first.
Okay.
Although we did receive a few comments already this afternoon.
All right, well, if you just want to step off to the side, and then we'll go ahead and have citizens' comments. Anybody? Rock, come on up.
Got several rock crews, Mexico Beach. Several questions. About 3 weeks ago, we had 7.5 inches of rain. Before that, we had 4.5 inches of rain. Anybody from your company even come out here and drive around Mexico Beach to see where the flooding is?
We have been out here several times during storm events. We were not out here the last few weeks, but we have been out several times during rain events to witness where the flooding is, yes.
Okay. Since that, before the 80 acres was purchased, the grand scheme of things here in Mexico Beach were to have water go into that, and the other way, come back, build another canal back, and put it into Salt Creek. Block off the 8th Street Canal, because everybody gets pissed when all the water comes out in the beach, and the beach is black. Nobody wants to be there. So that was the grand scheme of things. They just replaced the pipe all the way on the Florida Avenue, all the way down, which is there. They originally thought it was a 4-foot pipe. It's a 3-foot pipe. Pipe is buried 4 feet in the ground. I only live a couple of blocks away from it. You can't dig 2 feet in the ground without hitting water. You're 80 acres of wetland. As soon as you dig a hole, it fills with water.
That's correct.
Right now, all the water is going that way. How are you going to dig out 40 acres? It's going to fill up 2 feet below the surface, and now you got a pipe that's 4 feet in the ground. How are you getting water to flow the opposite direction to fill something up that's already filled? How does that work?
So not all the water will be going to the 40-acre pond. That not all the water will be able to go there. Just from a stormwater standpoint, and we call it bucking grade. Anytime you try to buck grade, it gets really expensive. Particularly if we have to pump the water. So we look at we're coming up with boundaries as to where it makes sense to get which water needs to go to the 40-acre pond and which water will still go to the 8th Street Canal.
But how would you even get water to the 40-acre pond that's going to be full of water to start with, and the pipe is 4 feet in the ground? The water's going the opposite direction to start with. How does that, I mean...
So the way that stormwater systems work is it does actually work to where you can come in with your pipes below the pond level. It's actually recommended to do that. When we go through the permitting process, the agencies actually don't want our inverts of our pipes going into our wet ponds to be above the water level, because you see significant amounts of erosion. Water is the best dissipator for energy, and so when it comes in below the water, the pond actually does stage up. But as part of our model, we model the hydraulic grade line, how the water is staging up in the system. So we can actually quantify what's happening at every single structure along that pipe system to know what's the maximum stage. Is it overtopping? Is it overtopping the road? We set critical nodes and we will evaluate all of that.
Okay. I mean, living here since before the hurricane, you could drive everywhere, you know, some of the streets don't have anything.
That's right.
And like, I won't talk about my property personally, but Colorado Drive at the end, 5 houses on each side of the road. There's no swales, there's no pipes, there's nothing.
You are correct.
So I mean, that's a pretty simple fix, you gotta put something in.
That's correct. You are
Just like-
correct.
Just
Those
like
are-
half the stuff around here is the same way.
There are a lot of simple fix. That is the low-hanging fruit, and that is going to be, we're going to prioritize the improvements, and the low-hanging fruit is always at the top priority, because those are things that are simple implementations that can make a significant improvement to those 10 houses.
Is there any look at the canal that they wanted to put in going back to Salt Creek? To take the water the other way and put the majority of it back instead of going through the canal system, either out of our main canal or 8th Street? Because 8th Street was supposed to be blocked off. That was supposed to be closed. That was just an emergency thing if it ever happened that they could plow it. But that was supposed to be shut down and water going 2 directions and back into Salt Creek.
That was not included in our study. That was something that was not included. The challenge is when you have established discharge points, the agencies look at those established discharge points, and we have a really hard time getting them to allow us to remove them, because water finds the path of least resistance, and it wants to go there. And I don't know if anyone of you have ever seen that, but if you fill in an area and try to redirect the water, a lot of times the water will figure out a way to go back to its original position. It happens with when you see roadways blow out. Everyone will like, well, yeah, the river was already going through there previously, and water finds its way back. It finds its way home. So it would be very hard to get rid of that 8th Street Canal. But if that was something that the city had a strong opinion on, we could look at it. But I think at this point, there's so much water that goes there today. We can look at making it better and maybe lessening the impacts to the beach, but naturally it does go there today, and there's a lot of ecosystems that are tied to that, and creating a new outfall somewhere else going into the Gulf would be, it just would be a challenge from a permitting standpoint.
Okay, so to be clear, there's nothing planned for anything making a canal going into Salt Creek like the original plans were? That's kind of like nothing's going on?
Not at this point.
Okay. Thank you, appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Miss Lisa, come on out.
Lisa Logan.
We're just gonna collect, off to the side, we're just gonna collect some information from the person that came up to the podium, just so everybody knows what's going on over there. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's fine. Tanya, I sent you an email a few weeks back.
Okay.
And you responded to me. Thank you for responding. And in that email, I outlined from my years of being here 10 issues that have been in play since 2003 when our development exploded, that have layered on each other to create the mess we have now. And I stated in that, and I stand behind my statement, of those 10 issues, which included the swale system, the culverts under the driveway, pipes going every which way, the lack of the replacement for the city's primitive but effective ditches, which covered most lots on the east side when those were illegally filled in. The city never put a system in place to handle that. So there were 10 things. We could eliminate, in my estimation, 80 to 90% of the flooding if we simply enforced the land development regulations that govern all of those things, and if we had city councils that would do that. It's always been an issue because people didn't want to do it, and then they were not made to do it. But those 10 or so issues are the underlying problems to the vast majority of that. So it seems to me that this this doesn't make a lot of sense to me until you get the underlying issues fixed. Because doing designs to pump water somewhere, okay, that, I get part of that. But if you don't fix the issues, which are non-enforcement that are written in the LDR, the Land Development Regulations, there's really no point. So I'm not sure where this is all going to lead. I understand your role in this, but there are other major issues that have to be addressed somewhere by the city. So, you know, I'll be glad to submit that letter and my comments to your email.
Oh, I have it. Anything that's been submitted to us to date will be,
Well,
it's already included in our log.
You know, it's almost like the cart before the horse kind of thing. If you don't fix the simple problem, as you said, the low-hanging fruit, if you don't fix all of those, then the rest of it's not really going to work. And that seems to be a stumbling block here, or an issue.
So a part of that is that you're kind of at this point today. So going back and making private property owners retroactively make improvements to the roadside swales is very difficult to do. But there are grant mechanisms out there. Are dollars out there that we can help the city get to help fund that. And so by providing the study, identifying where the problem points are, we can actually go after grant dollars to allow the city to hire a contractor to come out and fix these broken areas. And so then you have a better starting point, and it makes it more manageable for the city to implement the LDR. And I think sometimes you get to the point where it's just the system is so broken, it's really hard to fix it because they have a limited amount of staff. And right now, if there's an impact and an issue, it's my understanding the city staff, the public works staff, has to go out there and implement it. But if we can get grant dollars and have private contractors come in and fix these issues, put in these swales, put in the culverts with grant dollars so that the taxpayers aren't having to be paying for, they're not having to pay the city to do this work, it will really help get them along a lot further along.
Well, thank you. I agree with that. I will send you some other information because it's not just the swales.
Oh, I
It's
agree.
things like the 40-60% coverage ratio. It's a whole lot of other things. The non-maintenance of so-called pervious pavers, which are not really pervious. It's all of these things that are layered upon each other. So
Some of those things we won't have control of in the study, but there are recommendations that the city can, they can implement. And now with the new city administrator and, we're working with Atkins to help make some recommendations. And part of this may be looking at, recommending that the city hire a third-party consultant to help do some of these reviews and do some of the inspections during construction to help lessen the burden of the staff, because it can be very challenging, especially when you have a lot of development like the city has been experiencing.
Lisa, would you forward that to the city administrator and also the council?
be happy to.
Thank you.
I am wondering when you will have some
who,
elevations
sir?
on these drawings.
Roy,
I'm sorry,
you are?
Monty Bilbrey,
At what address, sir?
318 Highway 98.
Thank you.
When do you think you're gonna have some elevations to go along with these drawings so you can get started on what we need to do?
So that is, right now it's on the schedule for about 3 to 4 months. We're gonna have everything ready, that will be submitted to FDM.
3 or 4 months more before you have any
Before
numbers?
we have, because before we can make elevation recommendations, there's a lot of modeling that goes into this. And these models are quite extensive. Just to run the model with all the different scenarios, just to run it one time through, it can usually take up to 3 or 4 hours. So there's a lot of nodes and a lot of factors. So every given point in our model, we can tell you where the water's staging, how it's impacted. If someone says, can you tell us if we block off this, how is it gonna impact the entire city? We can tell you that. Once the model is finalized, we can tell you how it is during, you know, how everything, this home on California Place will be impacted, or California Drive will be impacted if, you know, with the improvements that we are doing. So there will be elevations, but every single node will have a different elevation.
Right, of course.
And your property, unfortunately, is not included in the study, but we will be able to tell you how the drainage impacts on all these other roads that are feeding it, and what's happening at these roads, and where it's staging to, and how it's going to be improved.
Is
as
that
part of
3
this.
months down the line also, before you know the main roads, the plan
Yeah,
for basic?
unfortunately, we can't issue a partial study because it has to be done holistically. If we give partial data, what would happen is everything is tied together. So, yes, it's a lot of moving pieces.
So no matter what, you're at least 3 months away from having numbers on that so that you can proceed with the plan. Is that right?
No, that will be the plan. And that H&H
You'll
study
have
will-
it ready in 90 days or so.
Yeah, that's basically what we will be, yes, but we have to get that plan put together, submit it to the city for review, and then it goes to FDM and FDEM.
Will they approve it also?
They will approve the funding for the plan, yes.
They won't have anything to say about the plan itself, just the funding, yes or no?
That basically, yes. They usually will say, there may be portions of the plan that they say, we will not fund this piece, or we will not fund that piece, but that's mostly a funding mechanism.
Okay. How long do you think it'll be before you're actually through with everything you're gonna do?
So the first piece, when we submit everything to FDM, you know, in 3 months, we submit everything to them. Once it gets into them, it does take a while. I've had them take over a year for review. There's not much that we can do besides just push the reviewers, but they are a government agency and they have a lot of applications. So they're not held to timelines. But that being said, we do what we can to push them. But our documents will be ready, and the low-hanging fruit, the things that the city can opt to invest in themselves, or we can look at alternative grant mechanisms to help pay for some of these improvements. They could be implemented while we're waiting on FDEM.
Do they pay for all of the work you're doing, or is the city paying you?
They actually pay for the work that we are doing.
Okay. All right.
Usually it's about 75 cents on the dollar. I don't know what this grant, I don't know what the terms were, if this is 100% grant or not, but a lot of times it's somewhere between 100% to 75 cents.
Monty, that's the reason why we had the question of could we make some expenditures out of the city and then apply those.
Right.
There's a possibility we could tell the story of 5 or 6 residents that are getting flooded so bad that they can't live in the house.
Yes, sir, I just want to
That
make sure. I
becomes a
understood
safety
it.
or a public, or a problem that we have to fix before that. So there's a possibility, once they have the plan put together, we can look at it and say, maybe we need to spend this much money to get this fixed.
But from what I'm understanding, that plan is still 3 months down the road, at least at best.
That's the overall
So
city
we can't
plan.
look at it for 3 more months, and I have a problem the whole time, so.
That's the overall city plan. If there's a possibility, they could tell us about a street
Okay,
that they've identified, there's a possibility.
maybe I can get her to come see you.
We're gonna have a lot of conversations.
Thank you.
Please submit your comments in writing, and having your addresses are going to be very helpful.
You have all this right there.
I will.
Y'all probably forgot me, I haven't been here in a while. My name is John Harrell. I live at 43 First Street, or as I like to call it, I am the last house in Bay County. So my first question is, does this project include the houses that line up against Gulf County? I'm not talking to you.
So if you are.
First Street and 386.
Yeah, so
The corner.
unfortunately, that is excluded from the study area, but that is so close to the study area that we will be looking at how everything is impacting those houses. Even though it's outside the study area, that's one of those areas. We're so close, we have to look at how how the drainage is impacting it. And if you can provide data that shows us what's happening in your area, it will really help
I
us
can
in
tell you, I
identifying
can't
those.
show you data until it rains.
Well, take pictures. If you have pictures and video, we really do appreciate that.
Okay.
Provide the address and those photos. It will all be going into this report that we're providing to FDEM, and all of this documentation, it will not go unheard, and the agencies really do appreciate it, as do we.
Okay, but if it's in Gulf County, we're not gonna be able to touch it, and you're not gonna be able to touch it.
Yeah, if we can't touch it, we have to look at how it's impacting. So if it's coming over the road, if there's something that we can do.
No, it's not coming over the road, it's coming up
Okay.
into the yards.
Okay,
Mine and my neighbor's yard.
okay. And so there's limited stuff we can do in Gulf
Right.
County. But what we
But-
can do is look at if there's any ways we can mitigate it or
Because-
make it better.
The city's building department and then Gulf County allowed the house to be built with a driveway to 386 with no culvert, which was a natural drainage ditch. When I first built my house, my water was supposed to drain down it and go behind First Street. And the mayor and I talked about this a few months ago. The culvert was never put in, so now 3 inches or more, it floods the lot in between us, comes up into my yard, goes over into my neighbor's yard. So.
And so
what-
that'll be one of those low hanging fruits where if there's a missing culvert, it needs to be installed.
Well, I
And so,
agree.
yeah. And so
And
that will
that's
be
why
one
I'm
of
talking,
those.
because I
Yes,
want it on
absolutely.
record. But anyway, my second question involves the 80 acres.
Yes.
Right now, the backside of La Siesta floods. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of rain. So now you're talking about pumping water there. How are you gonna protect those homes?
So we will definitely not be pumping water in
Well,
this evaluation.
okay,
Okay,
I'm
I just
sorry,
want to make
that's
sure
wrong.
that
Yes.
that's on record. Pumping gets very expensive. There's a lot of negative
Right.
negative connotation with pumping.
My bad.
Yes. So we will be evaluating this pond to look at how the water comes in. Putting in this pond will not negatively impact the homes. We want to make sure that whatever we're doing is making everything better. We do
Right.
not want to provide a system that is actually going to make things worse.
So you guys have not looked at that and come up with a solution yet then?
That's right, because right now we're collecting all the data. I mean, the survey has taken a long time. Getting all of the survey data, we do have data for that, but collectively, we have not completed the entire model yet. That is
Okay.
not completed. So,
And I believe that with this work that we're doing, we have to show that there's a net benefit.
that's right.
So obviously, we have to look at that and those like numbers and everything. I know it gets very complicated in just like the talking about it, but we have to show that we're not negatively impacting any of the
But
surrounding
you
areas.
guys are aware that it does flood those, and I mean.
We are aware that there is major issues.
Yes.
If you did not, even though I don't think they're here to speak for themselves, I know a few people live on that street, and it's bad.
Absolutely.
And it takes a long time for it to go down.
Yes. Yes, and we are aware of that.
Okay.
And yes, I have actually been on every single street, looked at every single area, all the tributaries. I've physically been out there, dry and rainy days, to make sure that I had an understanding of what it's doing, what it looks like, and just to understand what's happening. Because drainage is something that it's really important. We have to make sure we have a system that works. And if we're proposing improvements, FDEM wants us to show what is the net benefit and how are we, and especially if structures impacted, we really need to know.
What is FDM?
The Florida Department of Emergency Management.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, thank you.
Oh,
Anybody else from the audience?
Mr. Mayor, may I say something?
Yes, sir.
One thing I would ask, just even with this project going on, once this project's completed, if you have flooding issues, please snap a picture, email that to the city administrator, let me know date, time, and approximate depth. And the reason is, even once we're outside this project, once the mitigation efforts have been decided, we can use those photos as evidence or justification to go for additional funding, whether it's through appropriations or grants or what have you. So during, how long are you accepting, or how much
As-
longer are you accepting?
We'll be accepting them through, as long, the sooner we get the data, the better. But as we're going through the study, the more, over the next 3 months, we'll be accepting information. So, we want to make sure we have as much data as possible.
Yeah, if you could,
Even after we're complete, we can include it in because there will be city review time, there's Atkins review time. They're still going to be doing their benefit cost analysis once we're completed. So with all of that said, we still have time to collect data and include that in the package. So you have a collective database of who's been impacted and where the flooding has occurred.
perfect.
And that way you could possibly expand your study area in the future as
Yeah,
well.
exactly. But those photos, the photos, daytime average depth, anytime we have a rainstorm or some sort of flooding event, grab those pictures and send them in, please. That really helps us.
Okay. We're done up there. Go ahead, Tim. You good? No? I'm good.
So I hope this was beneficial to give you an idea of what we're doing, why we're doing it. And please, we can't stress it enough, please reach out, provide your information, and encourage your neighbors to do so as well. We want to make this a collective project that's going to really make a benefit in the community. And being able to demonstrate that benefit is by having your information, so we can quantify how we're going to be improving all of your quality of life when it rains. Well, thank you guys so much. And
Everybody, if you just for a second,
Sorry.
just for a second, I just want to, I forgot to introduce Chris in his first meeting here. Could you just stand up, Chris Truitt, our new city administrator? Make sure to stop by and say hi. We're gonna, in the next couple of weeks, we're gonna put together a meet and greet, hopefully over at Driftwood Inn, and we can get everybody in there to shake a hand, meet his family and him. And also, at the end of the week here, we're gonna lose Mr. Mel, and man, I can't say enough about Mr. Mel and the job he's done to this point. I appreciate it so much. Maybe if you got a couple minutes, give him a call and say thank you. Be great. That's all I got.
Well, thank you all so much for coming. We really appreciate your time and all your feedback.
Does anybody have any questions?